Welcome to the briefing note. This is hopefully the first in a series of talking with all of the federal Liberal leadership candidates. Today I'm joined by Karina Gould. Hi, Karina.
Hi, Sarah. Good to be
It's-
back.
yeah, it's nice to chat with you again. We're in much different circumstances than the first time we ever met, actually, which was here in the store.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that was at least 2 years ago, I want to say.
At
Three, maybe?
least it might have been 3 years ago because I think
Because
it
you
was
were the Minister of
family.
Families. Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
I was there because I was doing a childcare announcement.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And we were all masked at the time.
Yes,
So
it was
that's
different time. Yeah, but it
different
was a great
times.
store. It was really nice to
Well,
visit. So,
thanks. Yeah.
yeah.
So we're going to chat about your bid to be the next leader of the federal Liberal Party and what comes along with that, the to be the Prime Minister of Canada. Um, so you've jumped into the race. It's you, Chrystia Freeland, your colleague in the House of Commons and in the Federal Liberal Party, and the newcomer, Mark Carney, who everyone seems to be, not everyone, a lot of people seem to be really excited about. But I think people should be excited about your candidacy because you not only have a seat in the House of Commons, but you're kind of running a different campaign than the other two, a more grassroots campaign
Yeah.
that I think it will speak to maybe more on the membership side of the party, who people who are willing to be more thoughtful. Not that other people aren't, obviously, everyone's thoughtful,
Yeah.
or most people are. Um, so tell me what was the trigger for you making this decision?
Yeah. So look, I'm really thrilled to be in the race, and I want to say that I'm really glad to have some excellent candidates who are running. I think that's really good for the Liberal Party, and most importantly, it's really good for Canada and for
Mm-hmm.
Canadians. But the main reason that I'm running is because I think we need someone who recognizes that Canadians have lost trust with the party, that we have to re-earn that trust. We need to re-engage Canadians and understand what they're going through on a day-to-day in their day-to-day lives, as opposed to, just talking about the macro level of the economy, which is obviously very important. But, politics is about people, and you have to understand where people are and what they're going through. And I think that's something that I bring to the table. I also think that, I have a decade of experience in politics. And for the past 18 months in particular, I've been going head to head with Pierre Poilievre in the House of Commons, and I know how to win. And
And you've totally been holding your own, by the way.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, and
Yeah.
more, right?
Yes, no,
So,
and more,
yeah.
and more. You've been able to definitely wield a sword against him in a way that a lot of your cabinet colleagues haven't been able
Yeah.
to be
And that's what
frank.
we need. Yeah. And but this is the thing is that, you know, yes, at this point in time, running to be the leader of the Liberal Party, but also the Prime Minister. But we're going to be
Yeah.
going into an election sometime in the next, 6 to 8 months. And so
Yeah.
we need someone who is going to go into that election and be able to win that election, and someone who's going to be there for the long term. Right? Like, I am so committed to the Liberal Party of Canada and to Canada. I joined the party when I was 14 years old. I've been a member of the party. I've been there through the highs and through the lows. I've been there to help rebuild, as after the loss in 2011, and to re-engage and figure out who we are as a party. And I'm going to be there today, tomorrow, and for years to come. And to your point, I'm also a grassroots politician. Like, I'm in my community, listening to people, knocking on doors, making sure I understand what's going on in their lives and bringing that back to Ottawa. Now, I would say that for the past couple of years as a government, we just haven't done as good of a job listening to people and being focused on their issues. And I think we have to change that. That's the only way that you can re-earn people's trust. It's the only way that you can win an election, because ultimately we're a democracy and people make those choices based on who they think will understand what they're going through and who they trust with the issues that they have. And we haven't done a great job of that over the past couple of years. I think it's what got us into office in 2015 in the first place. And then we got what I call governmentitis. And we were more focused on being the government as opposed to listening to people. And eventually we caught up with some of those issues, but people had already said, well, you weren't focused at the time that we need it, like on housing, for example, on groceries, um, and talking about the things that people really care about. So I'm in the race because I care about Canadians, I care about Canada, and I'm going to stand up and fight for our values, for our economy, for our jobs, and for our way of life. And right now we have both the threat from south of the border when it comes to our economy, but we also have an internal threat from Pierre Poilievre in this iteration of the Conservative Party of Canada, which has a very, very different vision of what Canada should look like, and one that I actually don't think most Canadians would be on board with if they were to actually be given the opportunity to see what Pierre Poilievre stands for. And so that's why I'm in it, because I want to fight for Canada and I want to fight for Canadians.
On the in the vein of maybe doing things a little bit differently, I and maybe this is crazy.
Okay.
But this could be a crazy idea. What if because I think a lot of people, there's a lot of anger against the federal liberals, right? Specifically against Justin Trudeau, but let's take him out of the picture.
Mhm.
Um, and which so, what if there was, someone running for the leadership was to say, you know what, we got some things wrong, and I'm really sorry about that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, like, do you has it come into your mind to make to have that conversation in some way with Canadians and be like, you know what, yeah, we messed up, we because
Yeah.
no one has said that actually.
Yeah.
There's been kind of a reflection on to some degree around or actually maybe there hasn't, I don't know, in terms of the way that the around the confidence and supply agreement, right, and about finding a way to continue to be the government, but maybe not necessarily looking out for the best interests of Canadians. It was more about the best interests of maintaining a government,
Mm.
which you touched on. Just maybe food for thought. I we're in a really hard place, I think, as a country right now, and sometimes just saying, you know what, we messed up, goes a long ways.
Yeah. Look, I think that's a really important point, Sarah. And it's something that I've been reflecting on a lot. And I think it goes back to the pandemic. Um, and look, it was a very hard time for everyone. And I think collectively as a country, we are still dealing with the kind of collective trauma that we all experienced for this, hopefully once in a lifetime event, but that had a big, big impact on all of us. And I think Pierre Poilievre has, kind of seized on some of that
Mm-hmm.
anger, um, and has used that to propel himself into a particular position. But actually, what I think we need is to try and find some reconciliation, and to bring that temperature down and understand where people are coming from. And that's actually always been one of my strengths. I was talking to my husband about this, and he was saying, you have this ability to like have so much patience for people who have different points of view than you, and you listen to them and you understand and you have this empathy. And I always think about in 2015 when I was running for office the first time, um, in a way, knocking on doors in my community and actually spending time listening to people. I feel like I left that race less partisan than when I began.
Mm.
Even though I'm a liberal and I'm 100%
Yeah.
a liberal, I listened to people and the reasons for why they were voting conservative, for example, or NDP, and really understood what it was that was motivating them, right? As opposed to being like, you don't understand, like you have to vote for me. And again, I think this is a little bit of
You
the,
don't see the world, I see it.
yeah,
Therefore, you are
exactly.
wrong and I am right.
Exactly. And I think that's always been the kryptonite of the Liberal Party of Canada is that, we tend to think we're right. And if you don't agree with us, you're wrong. And that's it.
Yeah,
And actually, what we need to do is understand where people are coming from, and try to bring them along on the journey.
100%.
And if they're not on the journey, that's okay because we're in a democracy and people have different points of view and they have different opinions on things. And I really feel like at this point in time in our country, we need to find ways to bring people together, and to have that common understanding. And I also think that, we shouldn't be at a point, we don't want to get to a point where we're like in the United States, where
Hmm.
Republicans and Democrats can't speak to each other. We have to be able to go grab a beer with someone or, go out with friends who have different points of view and still be friends at the end of the day and still be Canadian. And I'm really concerned about the level of polarization in our country. And so one of the things that I want to bring to the table, and I think I do bring to the table, is understanding where people come from and, trying to build that bridge and see each other as Canadians first who have different points of view, right? But at the end of the day, we're all working towards this project that is called Canada. And we need to be able to do that in a way that is respectful and peaceful, because we've also seen just this extraordinary increase in, not actual violence, but at least more violent rhetoric,
Hmm.
in our country that like we just can't have. And so what are the things that we can do as leaders and politicians to bring that tone down and reach out to people, so that we can all move forward together? And I think particularly at a time when we're facing this very real economic threat, from the United States, like we have to be Team Canada. We have to be united and we have to be Canadian first. And like those divisions just, that's only going to weaken us. So we need to find that ability to be united and to be strong together, because that's how we're going to protect all of us.
Yeah, I think that's a message. Honestly, I think that's a winning message, in terms of, talking to Canadians and even people. I mean, you're running for to be the Liberal leader. But I think that's a message that, people outside of the Liberal Party, would be welcome, I think, to hear as well, because there is a lot of the pandemic really was, something that kind of, turned the key, right?
Mm.
And ignited something, right? If we're thinking about our country as a car, and we still have to find a way to live together.
Yeah.
And, I've engaged in a lot of reflection in how I personally, and even through Madam Premier, the conversations that I've had. And yeah, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on things, and I want our political leaders to engage in that same reflection. I think that is a critical component of being a leader or being in a leadership position, because you're not always doing everything right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll give you another example. Like, I think we were too late to the game, when it came to how Canadians were feeling kind of at the tail end of the pandemic when it came to inflation. We spent too much time telling people that things were fine, and not, really understanding and listening to what Canadians were telling us, where they were saying, like, oh my gosh, prices are out of control. I can't afford my mortgage. And eventually we got there, but like it took us too long. And I think that was another critical moment where, Canadians kind of said, well, are they even focused on us right now? Like, is
Yeah.
this a government that is listening to us, and what we need? And, we eventually got there and did some really big things on housing. But again, like it didn't happen at the right time. And so we have to, I think, just be more in touch with people on the ground and listening to them. And like another example, and I don't know if it's the same in Alberta, but certainly like in Ontario and Quebec, auto theft is a huge issue. And like, we just didn't act fast enough on it. In Canada, feeling safe and being safe is something
Hmm.
that we value. And if people don't feel like that. That's not acceptable. And so I think as a government, like we just have to be able to act faster on the issues that matter to Canadians. So that's something that, I reflect on a lot is that, like, I think there's lots of good things that we've done as a government over the last 10 years, but we haven't always gotten things right. And particularly over the past couple of years, have we been listening to what people want on the ground? Or have we been doing things because we think that's the right thing to do as a government? And I think it's been more towards the latter. And the only way that we're going to re-engage with Canadians and build that trust, again, is if we're actually responding to the things they are telling us are important to them right now.
So, what are you hearing then, as a part of your campaign, which is, obviously very new? But what are you hearing from members of the federal Liberal, and maybe even if you're just, because you're probably only not, if you are door knocking and you're targeting registered, well, anyone can be a registered Liberal, but what are you hearing as the most important issues right now?
Yeah. I mean, certainly everybody's worried about Trump and the threat of
Yes.
tariffs. I mean, that is the number one thing that I'm hearing from people.
Well,
Um,
and you're in Ontario, where the auto sector is obviously a critical part of the economy. And I'm here in Alberta, where energy is a critical number one part of our economy. So, um, yeah,
Well, but also agriculture,
yeah,
right? I
also,
mean,
yeah,
think about beef exports to the United States from Alberta. I mean, and same in Ontario. Like, there's maybe not beef, but other pork is a huge one. Like this is on everybody's mind, as it rightfully should be, because it could potentially have a devastating impact on
yeah.
our economy. But certainly, what I'm hearing from people is that. They want us to have a strong response, and they want to feel reassured that we've got this. And that's something that obviously is top of mind and really important. And this is again where we need that Team Canada approach, and everyone has to be on board. And if I know one thing about Canadians, no matter where they are in the country, they're very proud to be Canadian. And this is an opportunity for us to come together. So that's number one. I'd say the second thing that I'm hearing is from party membership, a desire to feel engaged in the party. Again, one thing that I would say has we've let go a bit over the past number of years is that real engagement with party membership. And even if you are in an area of the country where you don't have a Liberal member of parliament, there are still Liberals there, and they have a voice and they have a vote, and they should be engaged in the party process. And so, one of the things that I want to do is really, as the leader of the party, make sure that we are providing those vehicles and those opportunities for people to have that voice. Because I think, again, we've been talking at people a lot, whether it's Canadians or whether it's the party membership. And the only way that you are successful in politics is when you listen. And so, just as much as we need to listen to Canadians writ large, we also need to listen to our party membership. The other thing that I hear about all the time is housing, and making sure that we are really tackling the housing issue. And then the other one is that I think people feel that we've lost a bit of our way. Maybe some of that has to do with the supply and confidence agreement. But I think another part of it has to do with the fact that we have waded into provincial jurisdiction quite a bit over the last 10 years.
Well, I think even just you saying that,
Yeah,
is important,
yeah,
right? Because no one else has said that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, that's kind of it. And the other thing that I would say too is that, like, I don't think we're going to win the next election by being conservative light. That's not how we're going to win the next election. We're going to win the next election by being liberals, but being very clear about what it is that we stand for and what it is to be a liberal. And I think we've done great things with the NDP. Like, dental care is huge. But at the same time, I think people want to see our party make sure that the things that the federal government is responsible for are working. and not to just give money to the provinces because we don't have accountability with the provinces when we give them that much money. So I think we need to focus more on what our federal responsibilities are and then find ways of working in partnership with the provinces to achieve those objectives that Canadians care about. So,
So
yeah,
you
I think
talk,
there's a
you,
lot of reflection to happen.
yeah, I honestly, it seems like you've done the work. What would you describe in 2025 as being liberal and so first liberal values and Canadian values?
Yeah. So maybe I'll just share like a story because this is what defines being a liberal for me. Is when I was younger and the results of the Quebec referendum were announced, I remember sitting on my living room floor with my parents feeling a lot of anxiety about what was going to happen, for the country. And when I saw Jean Chrétien come on TV, I don't remember what he said, but I remember feeling this sense of relief that my country was going to be okay. And I had this thought of saying, like, that is a man who is fighting for Canada. And it's one of the reasons why I joined the party because liberals fight for Canada and they fight for Canadians. And that I think is what needs to embody who we are as liberals in 2025. We have to stand up for the values that make us special as Canadians. I think, our humility is something that is important as Canadians, but also, our desire to have a peaceful, inclusive country where everyone, no matter what their background is, no matter what their family status is, has an opportunity to succeed and to prosper. And so for me, what being a liberal is being able to manage a government effectively, because honestly, that's the baseline that Canadians expect of you as a
Hmm.
government, right? Is to
Yeah.
deliver effectively government services, but also to ensure that we have equal opportunity in this country. It's not necessarily for us to say that, you are going to be successful, but it's to say we're going to create a level playing field so that when you step onto that field, you have every possibility in the world to succeed. Right. And that for me is the essence of what it means to be a liberal. I think it's core principles of fairness and justice. And also, really understanding that like Canada is and can and should be the land of opportunity. Like for me, what I want for Canada, and I think it's possible. I think in many ways it is, but it can be even more. The best place to start a family, the best place to grow a business, and the best place to be successful. Like those are the things that we can have as Canada and as Canadians. And that's what I think it means to be a liberal.
What do you, so I'm just imagining you, let's say you win the leadership race and you're on the debate stage during the general election going up against Pierre Poilievre. Um, how do you, if he was to say, for example, you don't know what Canadians want, you don't know understand Canadian values, um, and I do, how would you respond to that?
Well, I would say that, I absolutely know what Canadian values are because I live them every single day and I'm a product of them. Like my mom was from Germany. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors from Czech Republic. They came here with $5 in their pockets, became apple farmers in Linden, Ontario. They worked hard. And my grandmother got to live to see her granddaughter not just become a member of parliament, but become a cabinet minister. And that is what Canada should be for everyone, right? And it's that combination of, working hard, optimism, tenacity that makes us who we are as Canadians. And so I'm a direct product of what Canada can and should and must be. And that's what I want for every single Canadian. And my story is, the story of millions of people across this country. And, that's what we need to foster and that's what we need to grow. And, you know, what Mr. Polyev is selling is a kind of a negative version of Canada. He's talking about all the bad things, but he's not offering solutions for them. He's just taking a mirror of people's anger and holding it back up to them. And that's one way to do politics, right? But I think the better way to do politics is to say, tell me what's going on. Let me understand what's going on, and let's find a solution for this together. And I think what Canadians want and are looking for is someone who can bring people together and raise our country up and not tear it down.
Hmm. Well, and I think going back to how you started the conversation with me around, your husband saying that you're actually really good at talking to people, right? And not mirroring that anger back at people when they respond to you with it, right? Um, does because then then you're not just angry together, right?
Hmm.
Because where does that anger together take you? Does it take you to a place where you're talking about solutions, or are you just talking about how everything is horrible?
Right. And, I think part of being a leader is you absorb some of that, right? You carry a lot of that burden on people. But part of carrying that burden is then lifting them up and carrying them towards something better and finding a solution as opposed to reflecting it back. And as you said, just being angry together. Because ultimately, I think what we want and need as Canadians is to say, okay, let's be honest about the challenges and the problems that we have, and then let's figure out how we get to good solutions. And as I said, I'm a partisan, obviously, I'm a liberal, but I'm agnostic to where good ideas come from. If, a conservative brings forward a good idea, like John Barlow, for example, who, has a private member's bill, I think it's John Barlow, about making it easier to pass on a family farm, like let's do that, right? Like if that's something that's going to help people, like I'm not opposed to taking good ideas from people from different political parties. Like I'm not opposed to that at all. And I think that's what we need right now is to not just say no because it's coming from the other side, but to really say, okay, let's figure out how can we do this together, and how can we have a win? And what I think Canadians want is they want to see their politicians working together. Obviously, there are people on the extremes that don't want that, but I think for the everyday Canadian, they just want people to work together. They want the country to work, and they kind of want you to get out of their face.
Yeah.
Like they're not like they don't need to see you every single day as a politician. They just want to know that their kids are getting a good education. They can go to the doctor when they need to, and they can get access to their government services on time and feel safe in their home and their community. So
Mhm.
that's what I want to offer to Canadians.
Well, and I think that's an important point because I think that, the way the winds are shifting right now, you can see what's happening right now in the US, right? Republicans are doing a humongous victory lap. And the only reason that they might actually try to work with Democrats is because their margins are so slim in their different bodies of government in the House and the Senate to different degrees. But there is a possibility that, the conservatives do win the next election and they do have a very healthy majority. And there could be an attitude of, I don't need them, right? So why would I work with them? And do Canadians actually want that? Or to your point, do they want a government that will work with different parties, depending if it's a good idea, they'll take it. They won't just
Yeah.
punish, politicians of a different political stripe because they are of a different political stripe. And I think that,
Yeah.
the writing is on the wall that that's, what will be on offer. Um, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far, is that you're either with them or against them in the same way that, Trump is either you're with me or against me. And I don't think that serves anyone particularly well.
No, and I mean, we can see because that's what happened when Harper was prime minister. And Pierre Poilievre has said that he just plans to do everything the same as Harper. I mean, I think he said that when he did his podcast with Jordan Peterson. So that's unfortunately how he operates. But I don't think that's what Canadians want or expect. And I can say as the government house leader for the past 18 months, when people come to question period and see how the Conservatives actually act in the House of Commons, they're appalled. Like they're absolutely appalled. And they want us to work together. They want us to, um, you know, not uh not be so, what's the word, like vindictive, right?
Mm.
When it comes to which side of the aisle you're on in the House of Commons. And I think that's something that is kind of a traditionally Canadian value, is that, we can find ways to compromise. I think that's kind of the great story of Canada. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily the most exciting country in the world, but we tend to get along and we tend to work, and that has been a hallmark of who we are as Canadians. And we're seeing with this iteration of the Conservative Party of Canada that they're much more radical than we've traditionally had in our country. It used to be that the Liberals and the Conservatives kind of danced around the center. One was a bit more to the left, one was a bit more to the right, but now we've seen, like, this iteration of the Conservative Party of Canada has gone much, much further to the right. And that's something that I think we should be worried about in Canada, because it doesn't lend us to that ability to find compromise, that ability to work together, and that ability of finding that middle way in Canada, which I think has served us for so well for so long.
So, what are your plans for your campaign in terms of, are you going to be getting out around the country? Are you going to be coming to Alberta, to BC? Where and what will your campaign look like in terms of outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to get out around the country, and I plan to get everywhere that I possibly can. It's a very short
Yes,
campaign.
it's not very
Normally,
long.
no, exactly. Normally, leadership campaigns are many more months than this one, but this is just under 2 months. So it's going to be pretty quick, but absolutely, I hope to get out to Calgary and Edmonton. My campaign is different than the other ones because, as you said, I am more of a grassroots campaign. And so that means that I need the support from grassroots members. So, I don't have the deep pockets of some of the other candidates. And what's really cool is in the first 36 hours of launching my campaign, we raised over $75,000 from people across the country, but in small donations. Right? The average donation size was $200. And so, for people who are listening, if you're interested and you're excited, if you can send $10, $25 my way, it actually makes a huge difference and will allow me to get out there and crisscross the country and talk to people and listen to people. And one of the things that I also will be doing soon is putting out a call for ideas. Send me your best idea for Canada. I want to hear from people across the country. I want to hear from members that will help build it into my platform as we move forward, because ultimately that's how we're going to be successful. So, absolutely, I'm coming to Alberta and I'm looking forward to it.
So, if people do want to donate or find out more about your campaign or even to get involved or organize for you, how do they do that?
So, go to karinagould.ca and you can register there to commit to vote for me or to volunteer. And you can also donate directly through the website. And just a reminder for anyone who wants to vote in the upcoming Liberal leadership race, you have to register by Monday, January 27th, is the deadline for membership cutoff. So if you want to vote for me or any other candidate, obviously I would prefer it was for me, please register by January 27th.
And it is, I believe, going to be a ranked ballot.
Yeah, yeah, it will be a ranked ballot. So
So you
um,
want to be people's number one choice,
I
or if
do
you're
want to
not
be
first, you
first.
want to be second.
Correct. Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I just want to say, because I was listening to a very popular Canadian political podcast, The Curse of Politics, yesterday, and it really irked me that I don't know if you listen to it or if you will listen to it, but they were very dismissive of your candidacy, and I think that is to their own peril. Not only because I think it discredits the the democratic process in that anyone can do this, right?
Yeah.
Um, but also, um, I feel like it's kind of, so establishment in that way, to kind of just be like, oh, to whoever it is, they don't even have a chance, right? Um, did anyone think Stéphane Dion had a chance?
Sometimes it's not a bad thing to be the underdog.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And I think Canadians like underdogs as well. And I think I offer something really different than the other two candidates. And again, with full respect to them and, whoever wins, I hope we all unite behind them. But I'm a different kind of candidate. And I am somebody who I think brings not just energy and freshness to the race, but also experience. Like I have almost a decade worth of cabinet experience, and I've learned a lot through that process and learned about what things I would do differently. And, one thing that I would also say is that politics is hard, right? It's really, really hard. And I have the scars and the bruises to prove it, but I've also developed the backbone for it as well. And, to jump into politics without any experience, I think is a pretty difficult thing to do. And I would say that particularly in this upcoming election, we need someone who understands politics and is going to be able to go head to head with Pierre Poilievre because for as much as I disagree with him, he's an excellent politician and he's been able to capture something that we're going to have to capture as well, or in a different way. And so, this I think requires somebody who has that knowledge and who has that skill. And I think I'm that person.
Something I haven't heard about, and maybe it just could be because I've missed it, but is any discussion of leadership debates? Is that something that's being talked about or has been scheduled?
I haven't heard about it, but I would hope that there are at least two in English and in French. It would seem to me that it is, an absolute imperative to have as we are going through this leadership race. So maybe Madam Premier is the first to call for it, but
Yes. Well, I mean, you can't have a leadership race without having the candidates debate.
yes, I would
I
agree
just
with
don't,
that.
I don't
Yeah.
think that's a leadership race.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's extremely important. And I think it's extremely important for the membership across the country to be able to make an informed decision.
Yeah.
You want to see how people fare in those moments. And, we know that leadership debates in the general election can make or break a party's chances. So we
100%.
need to see how each of us does in the leadership debate for the Liberal Party leadership.
100%. And I think especially because Mark Carney is untested in that way. He's never taken part in a political debate before. And I want to see how, he would fare because if you can't debate well against people within your own party, how could you debate a politician of an opposing political stripe effectively?
Yeah.
Right. It just,
And who knows,
you can't,
maybe
it's,
he'll be great, right? Like, but I think it's only fair for the membership to see that. And I
yeah,
also think to your point, like it's actually, really important for all of us, whoever becomes the leader, to have that practice before we get into a general election,
yeah,
right? Like I think you want to do that and make sure that you're ready because again, as much as I, don't like Pierre Poilievre's ideas, he's really good at it, right? And so we can't underestimate him and assume that he's not going to be good in that situation because he's actually really good at it. And we need to put the best person there on behalf of our party because that's when Canadians writ large are going to tune in and make their decisions.
yeah. Well, and I honestly think that with all due respect to Mark Carney and Chrystia Freeland and whoever else may be on that stage, I think you are a very effective communicator, and so I want to see you in that arena, and I want to see how you all perform.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, me
yeah,
too. And
yeah,
but that's also just like that's the job, right? Like that
yeah.
is part of the job. And
Communication
so,
is the
yeah.
most undervalued, like under you know when I make a decision now on, not only around, there are two things I keep in mind when I'm voting: values
Mhm.
and how effective that individual is as a communicator. Those are my two most important decision making factors when voting for someone now, because if you can't communicate, you have no hope.
Yeah. 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 I agree with you.
If you can't tell a story, you can't deliver a key message. If you can't, succinctly describe a policy without having to, give someone a binder, I'm sorry, but you're not cut out for the job.
And I think what people are looking for right now too is authenticity,
Yeah,
right? Like
100%.
they're looking for someone who is just being themselves, because they can smell inauthenticity from a mile away.
Yeah,
And they're saying, like, I like politicians are so much closer to people now than they ever were because of social media, just because of the landscape that we live in and or the environment that we live in. And so it's different than, maybe only seeing the prime minister on TV on occasion, as opposed to like seeing your politician in your local community or at the national level on a more regular basis. And if you don't seem like a real person, people are like, well, what's the point? Like it's just a different environment than it has been. And so, I think that's something that I'm good at, because people often say like, oh, you seem so authentic and so genuine. And I'm like, well, it's because I am, because this is like, I'm not putting on an act. I'm just telling you what I think and who I am. And I think that's really, really important in this day and age.
yeah, I agree. Okay, well, you've made me add a third criterion onto my three very important factors because I do think that is values, communication, and authenticity. Those I think that those are the trifecta of what makes a politician in 2025 and beyond. You're right. So,
Yeah,
well,
cool.
good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, go knock some doors or something. I don't
Yeah, I think it's
know.
more phone calls now because it's hard to
Yeah,
knock on doors across the country, but
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But no, thank you very much. Well, I'm excited about this, and it's been really awesome to have people from across the country raise their hands to volunteer, to make donations, and that's how you build a campaign, person by person, adding them on, and let's go from here.
Amazing. Thanks, Karina.
Thank you, Sarah.